Oh, I muted myself. Hey, everybody. Welcome to wasmCloud Wednesday for Wednesday, June 11th. We've got a sooner than expected demo turnaround from last week, which is awesome. Right now on the agenda, we've got a demo from Mike again, from drag and drop to ETL Pipeline. And we've got a couple important things to call out: an issue and documentation page of the week. But otherwise, I think we'll probably have some good discussion that follows from the demo and seeing how Mike's going. Mike, how's it been since 7 days ago?
Yeah, so 7 days. Thanks for having me again. It feels like an eternity, especially in software development. If you have a few hours where you're in the flow, you can get quite a bit done. So what I want to do today is just follow up, starting with sharing my screen as a step one. And hold on. Application window. Here we go. All right. Share that. Bring this back. Okay, so if you were here last week or have watched the recording since, then you're familiar with that diagram. And basically, just a 2 second recap. It's an ETL pipeline or an ETL builder that I'm working on, built on Wasm Cloud. You have any kind of source that comes in. In the middle, you have components provided by customers. It's just a Wasm component they upload, and that gets then processed, and then you can send that data to any kind of sink. And yeah, so in this last week, I managed to put together some working environment where this actually plays out quite nicely. So what I want to show today is what that looks like, and then just ask me questions and have chats about that. But first things first, I have a Wasm host or a Wasm Cloud environment here. Um, One host, nothing else deployed. That's important to make sure I'm not faking anything here. But the other thing that I actually did build was a quick UI here where all you got is some navigation on the left and a canvas here where you can build that pipeline that we just saw in the diagram. So I want to walk you through that. And basically, you have your sources the same way as you have. You can drag them in here, and you can then get your processor, plug that in, and syncs. Well, the only thing I've built so far is a log sync, which just writes data to the wasmCloud log file. And the reason is that 7 days is not quite eternity, turns out, and you can only get so much done. But in any case, here's a log sync. You can connect these things together. So once the HTTP request comes in, data flows to that WASM processor, and then from there, it goes to the log output. Now, doing this top down, get a better view. So this basically is just a very straightforward. You could add multiple processors, you could fan out, you could do all kind of stuff. In the background, what it does is it creates a config file based on YAML. It's not a WADM config file. It's just one proprietary or whatever specific to this app. And the way it looks like is just a sec. Make this bigger. So it's basically our three nodes that we have, or steps. They have certain types. It's an in HTTP, a processing, and again, as you can see, 1 week is only so much time. So we have a hard-coded file path, but imagine that the people could upload that. They could click on that Wasm processor. It would pop up a sheet from the bottom. They could configure it. Same for the other nodes. But anyway, and we have the out component. Now in the diagram I had two out components actually. So we can just make this two, and you can see there's a depends on array, so it depends on the other one. If we go back here, that looks exactly like the diagram that I had initially. So the next thing that you can do is you can deploy the whole thing. When I do that, what happens in the background is it takes remember from the diagram, let me show you that real quick. Remember how these components consist of multiple other Wasm components, and then I use WAC to combine them, like the in and the out and whatnot. Now, it's exactly the same thing here. So when I click deploy, it gets the in HTTP, it gets the out internal, it whacks them together. Is it a verb as well? Anyway, it puts them together using whack, and it then also deploys or creates a WADM file based on the config file here. So it converts all that. It sees that there's an in HTTP, so it adds an HTTP capability. And let's do it. So click that button. That spins for a minute while it's doing all the work, but once it has the WADM file, it deploys it to the environment, and it also visualizes that in the UI here, so that people can then see this pipeline is now active and data is flowing through the pipeline. Now, when it's in that state, then you can create a new version. You can click on that. You can look at the logs. You can do the whole observability here as well. Maybe it's another tab, but maybe I'll come back next week and show that. But that's that. Now, the other thing I want to show obviously is when I go here, you remember that interface that had nothing. Now, if I refresh that, you can see that we have the 4 components. Bug report incoming for the missing name here, but the 2 providers we have NATS messaging for component to component communication so that they can independently scale and do their thing. Bunch of links, bunch of configs. Now, from a customer perspective, all they have to do is just basically create a Wasm component, upload it to that processing node here, and hit deploy. And it's already using a local OCI registry that I have in place. So once we go to production, then that'll just use a public one. But the other thing I want to, actually, no, I'm not going to do that. But basically, I could now send a request to that HTTP endpoint. The Wasm file I hard-coded makes the string uppercase, and then you would see that in the logs twice. But I would have to share a different screen, so I'll skip that. But yeah, take my word for it. That actually works. So I'm going to stop here. But basically, very high level, last 7 days, putting a UI together and then converting this into a WADM file so that we can deploy that. Any questions? Any thoughts? Happy to chat.
Oh my God, I have so many.
Pick the
Colin, I think
first.
you unmuted first, and I
I
usually monopolize the time. You go.
no, I think yeah, whacking together is awesome. I think it might be even more since there's wRPC, you shouldn't necessarily have to whack everything together, right? So I don't know. I mean, having whacked many things together in the past, it is nice and easy, but for dynamic, I don't know if that's maybe like something you would think about later. It's not really that big of a point.
Yeah, it's a good point. Definitely, it crossed my mind. The reason I went with using WAC was to reduce the number of components that float around. I think it's just a personality thing. I feel overwhelmed when I see 17 different or whatever. It would be 2, 5, 2 more 9. It would be 9 components in my WADM file and in my WADM UI. And that's really the only reason I combine them together, to have more of a one-on-one mapping between what I see here and what's in wasmCloud. But yeah, I definitely see the points of not doing that, because it would speed things up. I wouldn't have to wait for that command to finish.
Well, also more just if using this isn't if you want people to, I don't know, it's kind of be a feature to be able to pop something in or change something on the fly, right?
Yeah,
or how, like, I mean, yeah, because I know for the purposes of this, whacking together is fine. It just someday.
Yeah, definitely something to keep in mind. I appreciate it.
Yeah, Mike, that was actually like I said, I have many questions, but just to stay on the same vein, is it so? I mean, I know, our feature of wRPC makes it nice that you can choose to break those apart later. My question is that something that's important to you? Like, are you like, well, I might break this out later, and this is, that's why like Wasm Cloud is so cool because I can do that, or are you honestly just thinking like I can compose them if they're all gonna just be running together? Why would I want it to go over wRPC anyways?
Yeah, I think that's kind of the initial plan I had to keep them composed because they like these two in here, like the HTTP in and the internal out, whatever they are, they're always together. They're always one unit. And then I reuse parts, obviously. The outgoing here is the same as here. But I guess now that I think more about it, I actually deploy the out component twice, once as part of this and once as part of that. If I didn't whack them together, then I would deploy it once and use links, right? Do I understand that correctly? I think.
Yeah, that's the pretty much. Yeah,
Mm.
I kind of wanted to, just tease that out because the distributed nature of wRPC is really cool, and it adds like fallibility to the operation. It's nice when it's all composed together and that like can't like fail to go over the transport. But yeah, I was curious. I feel like it's good documentation for us to have if we support both, like why you would go one way or the other.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah. Yeah.
um, yeah. I mean, also, you're using a P3 kind of preview, or
Oh,
0.3
it's
preview of WASI
P2.
with the
P2.
streams?
Yeah. No streams yet. No.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, that is definitely something once that comes out,
Yeah.
you should use. It would work very well with the images you have of streaming things. If you had uh if you had components that took streams in and out. You're not using input streams or output streams. You're
No.
just
Is it
hitting
available? I wasn't even aware that it's available.
oh
I read
input
about
streams
it.
and outputs. Well, input streams and output streams are available,
Okay.
but they're input or output. Uh the with 0.3 it'll be just stream. So you can take a stream as an input or take a stream as an output.
Yeah.
Um my C2PA stuff uses input streams and output streams. So uh I don't know. I've shared that I think in this before. I can send you a link to a WIT file that has input streams and output streams as an example.
Nice.
But
I
yeah, I would
definitely
think
read
for
about streams
ETL
and I
you would
was like,
want
that's
streams.
yeah,
Sorry.
that's what I need. But I didn't. I'm like I'm cutting edge, but not that cutting edge. So
Oh no,
I
it's in there. It's not I don't know. I think you're cutting edge. You're just trying to go with an ETL thing and have an ETL solution. But I think once you iterate on it, you would want streams.
yeah.
And you'd probably want dynamic in and out kind of stuff. But I mean that's just the way things go, right?
Yeah.
That's how software works.
Yeah, yeah, that's why I'm here too, right? So it's awesome. I definitely, yeah, I'm gonna check it out. I'll send you a message afterwards. Catch up.
Um, so Mike, I guess I have more questions, but the next one I think of when you hit deploy, does that basically take your like config that you've drawn up and send it to a backend somewhere, and then that's what does the transform and the whacking and everything?
Yeah, that's right. The reason I split it into separate services is that I want to open source the web interface and the CLI and all that stuff, and keep the actual hard logic in a separate service that I can run. But it is a Rust service just exposing an HTTP endpoint that is exec or called by the web app, and if there's ever a CLI, the CLI would call the same thing and would upload exactly that code here.
Okay.
As we see. Yeah.
Yeah, cool. Every time I see a browser and I'm thinking about us doing WASM things, I'm like, ooh, what kind of WebAssembly could we throw on the front end to do some of this stuff?
Yeah.
Uh, I'll
Well,
nerd snipe you with a project that I worked on, wit-to-wadm, which just translates like a wit to a wadm file. So a really similar structure, like you just go from your config to wadm.
yeah.
I'm not saying that's the right thing here, but I thought it would be neat to run some of that client side, if there
Yeah.
is something fun. But
I agree. The other thing that actually went through my mind was running that on wasmCloud as well, instead of running a separate HTTP server and all that, because it could totally work there as well. Having a service that exposes to web app and whatnot.
Yeah.
Thing is, I had a week to do it, and I was familiar with building standalone services. There we go. But easy enough to migrate, obviously. So that's potentially an idea.
No, Mike, this is awesome for a week. Like last week, you showed us squares on an Excalibur, and this week you have like drag and drop deploy pipeline. Like this is awesome. I I don't want to bombard you with all the billion questions, but yeah, I can't wait to get your like kind of readout on like the experience, what you ended up building, you know, everything you open source. Can't wait to take a look at.
Sounds good. Yeah, I mean that's really all I've got to as a foundation. So yeah, I won't be back next week, I'm sure, but I'll come back in another time when I have a bit more to show.
Next week you'll be announcing your like seed round funding.
Yeah, let me know if you're investing.
Yeah, this is
Actually,
definitely an area ripe for some WASM in an industry sector that really could use some of what
You know,
we've been
one
working on.
one thought I have is that again, I keep thinking about that diagram on the Cosmonic website for Kubernetes. And one thing is like if you have this view here, and I can do a few more boxes here showing like, different edge environments where that certain you can drag components into the edge environment. I would automatically deploy it there. Like I have some thoughts of how this could be really taking advantage of all the features we have there to distribute the load and whatnot. So
so
yeah,
cool.
interesting
Uh,
times.
as a Cosmonic employee, I would be happy to talk to you about what you could do in Kubernetes. It'd be fun.
Sounds like a plan,
I
yeah.
wish I had a like WasmCloud sticker on the back of this hat so I could just
Just flip
turn
it.
it around.
One of those hats with double bills. That would be
Yeah,
great.
yeah, that's
I'm sure people at various conferences we go to would not like that. But yeah, changing booths.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, hey, Mike, awesome stuff. Again, I can't wait to hear about more. Oh my God, I can't wait to hear about how it went. I'm sorry, I talked a lot. Everybody else on the call, do you guys have questions or comments for Mike? Alrighty, I think that was enough time. Okie dokie. Yeah. Also, I may have said it, but if you open source part of it, let me know. I'll link to it in the community notes if you want that. But if not, no worries. So I think we can go ahead and move on to the next things in the agenda. I just had a couple little things that I wanted to chat about. I put it, I could have made it discussion items, but I want to try to keep doing the issue and docs page of the week because it is a great place for us to, talk about new things that are coming across the pipe road and point to new documentation that you may not know exists. As far as the issue of the week goes, this isn't an issue as much as it is a call to action. Um, if you've seen our community roadmap planning that we do every quarter, it takes we usually try to do it in the first community meeting of the quarter. So that is going to be coming up in July here pretty soon. I'll double check with holidays, but I don't think July 4th is on a Wednesday, so I'm not that worried about it. But this discussion is where we try and source a lot of our feedback from folks who aren't on the community call, who aren't in Slack, or who are here. It's just an open space for people to leave comments about what they'd like to see in wasmCloud in the next quarter, trying to scope those to a shorter time frame and then triage them ahead of the roadmap planning is really, really helpful for us, like figuring out what we can do. So yeah, if you've been holding on to some thoughts or have some things that you'd really like to see us lean into going forward, please leave comments there. Of course, there's no guarantee that we'll be able to find all the maintainer time to do all the things, but the community feedback is what really helps give us direction in the project beyond like stewarding the goals of being an awesome WebAssembly platform. So yeah, all feedback and thoughts are welcome here. So this is the issue of the week. Would love for folks who are in here all the time to leave some of their thoughts. Um, on the, I guess this now is when I put my Cosmonic hat on. On the Cosmonic side, we've been working with people who have been who deployed wasmCloud to prod, who have been working with wasmCloud 1.0 for, maybe not a year, but who have been working with wasmCloud 1.0. So I certainly have some things that I'd like to throw on here from the Cosmonic perspective of like, hey, it would be great for this mechanism to be more pluggable, or it'd be great to be able to this is a general wasmCloud one, but it'd be great to embed the wasmCloud host inside of Wash, and then maybe have a mode where you don't need to like enable Nat's Jetstream when you're just doing local development. But anyways, just to note that I'll try and put the things that I feel like wasmCloud should be doing from a project perspective in here. And then I'll also try and call out like where my perspective is fed into by people who we like work with at Cosmonic for wasmCloud. I hope that distinguishing makes sense. I think that at the end of the day, maybe it doesn't really matter. But just to call that out, I'll probably put some thoughts in here pretty soon so we can discuss them before the roadmap planning. Masood, I think your comment's great. I'll read it out loud, but just come off mute if you want to read it. You said in the chat, I'd love to see on the upstream side support for HTTP 2. Yeah, we've gotten this request a couple times. I forget the status of this, because WASI HTTP is HTTP 1. I don't know if WASI HTTP, the interface for like the P3 version of the interface, will support HTTP 2 or not. I'm not
I,
sure if you.
I recall Bailey saying a while ago, and I also read it on the upstream side, again, a while ago, that support for HTTP2 is going to be follow-up to P3. Basically, P3 is going to pave the way. The reason that I brought it up, and I'm sure everybody knows, at least those who work in the kind of AI space, all the new protocols are based on HTTP2, which kind of exclude using, WASI and WebAssembly directly there.
Yeah, that is disappointing. I would not calling anything out. It would be really nice to be able to start writing some WASI based like agentic things. So even if it's something that we need to prototype on the Wasm Cloud side or something like experimental interface, or have like a provider that does a translation, I'm sure it's more complicated than that. Um, that would be nice to be able to take advantage of that ecosystem.
Well, what I have in mind right now is that, either using messaging, like through a provider that communicates, or basically kind of provider doing the HTTP2 side and then using the HTTP 1.1 on the backend side to engage services of the components. Again, it just extra plumbing that you have to do.
Well,
Get there?
well, you can have something that takes HTTP2 kind of in ingress, but you just wouldn't be able to write a component that could, take the HTTP2, right? It's the what. So I think I don't know. Have you considered that? right? You can't make a component that can do all the HTTP2 things if you're trying to have something having right. Does that make sense? But you could have an HTTP2 server, HTTP2 something like Pingora, and have that then put something onto the NATS bus or whatever, right? To call your components.
Yeah, again, that becomes kind of messaging, right?
Well, I'm just saying, if you had some sort of agentic, if you wanted to take some sort of agent requests, right, or call some sort of ML workflow, you wouldn't be able to, have all of the HTTP2 spec available, but you would. Brooks, you're contagious. But I'm just kidding. But you would be able to, take HTTP2 requests
Right.
and or outgoing
So what I'm
requests.
doing right now is really doing the bridging to a provider.
I can. Yeah, so you could have a provider that could handle HTTP2.
Yeah, that makes sense. And that's what I think you said, Masood, right? Like you'll take
Yeah.
HTTP and then you publish it on messaging or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's why also I'm interested to see when we're going to, when the spec is going to be ready for WASI messaging, because I would like to implement it for wasmCloud and also use it in my work.
Yeah, I think this is great stuff to leave on put on the roadmap. I mean, like, when it becomes WASI messaging may not be directly in our control. We can certainly do Wasm Cloud messaging, or um, I suppose we could do, if we like, we've talked about previously that we can do like a NATS messaging interface, something that more directly represents the NATS message bus, or maybe even Jetstream. So I think this
If you've seen the proposal, because time to time I review it, it has a lot of nice features, right? I mean, the one that we have right now is simple, is effective. A lot of people using it. I'm using it, but it doesn't have all the bells and whistles that you need to do some fancy stuff. And that's why I'm interested in implementing the spec as a provider.
interesting, very interesting. This is all really good brain fodder, really for Q3. I think honestly, we kind of go back and forth on the like where the WASI cloud interfaces and like the more generic interfaces fit versus the more specific vendored ones. So it, I for one think that we're already kind of using standards in a lot of places, like Postgres is a protocol standard, right? Um, but we make such heavy use of NATs, like it is available already, that it would be really neat to have more robust support for that messaging system. And maybe you could back it into Kafka, and that's fine. But like Masood, I'm sure you saw this when you were working with the NATS object store, key value store interfaces. Like there's no mechanism in there for like there's no like
Yeah,
create bucket with
my first implementation really is going to be for NATS because it's kind of integrated, and that means that it makes everybody, make it possible for everybody to immediately leverage volume messaging with what we already have in place, right?
yeah, yeah. Um yeah, and we've probably beaten this horse to death about the like NATS trademarking, but just to continue to affirm that it's staying in Apache 2, and I don't I don't see an equivalent replacement project for what we use it for in wasmCloud. So, I don't think there's anything really to be concerned about there.
Is it opening a can of worms, Brooks, to talk about flexibility in the platform? Or is that
I mean,
it's
can.
just stuff you and I have talked about various times? I just think it's good to know. We don't have any like plan, but like I think many of us who have been around this project for a while and are maintainers have been kind of having random conversations with each other and stuff about we're trying to make it as flexible as possible and flexible at the right levels. Like we have to make some guarantees at some levels. Like we can't be everything to everyone, but Wasm lets us do that a little bit more than other technologies would because interfaces are awesome. So I like we're thinking of how to do that. There's thinking being done around how to make it there. So like Brooke said though, like where there's certain value that things like the Nats adds that um that it would be worth like that we don't want to get rid of it. Like there's the thing that you have some people when they come in and see it for the first time they're like, well, just use a service mesh. Well, Nats actually replaces like three technologies that most people are used to using from like the Kubernetes space, and so that's where its value really lies. So what we want to do is not lock people into it, but also make sure that like we can make some assumptions on how we set things up, and so like that's the hard part here. So we're trying to go for flexible, but I think that's as we go into new territory here.
Well, I personally think, Taylor, that Nats is great. Actually, that was one of the primary things that attracted me to Wasm Cloud platform, because that gives kind of easy way of making the system distributed without coming up with a lot of fancy stuff to do it yourself.
Yeah, I think so. Uh, we've already kind of internally done some refactors on the Wasm Cloud host to make abstractions for some of the things that we tightly couple to Nats for today, like configuration. When a component you configure a component or link or a provider, the host is reaching out to a config store, and that config store is being backed by Nats. But now there's like a little light abstraction there, so that if you're embedding wasmCloud, you don't have to back it with the Nats object or the Nats key value store. But if you do that, then you are responsible for making sure that that config is available for any, distributed host. And that's a hard problem. And we don't want to be responsible for that. So leaning into Nats there is great. I feel like we try so strongly for Wasm Cloud to not make it dependent on specific technologies like Kubernetes or like a service mesh. Um, and I think we can probably, I'm somewhat speaking with my Cosmonic hat on again. It would be really nice to be able to feel that same way with Nats as well. There are a lot of people who use Kubernetes already and use service meshes, and they have their opinions and things, like all traffic has to go through Istio, for example, is a common one that we see in like big Kubernetes things. So it'd be cool. I mean, I don't want to do that, but it'd be cool if people who want to, run Wasm Cloud in a Kubernetes style area and just send stuff over HTTP, like you can just do that. Then, you don't have to set up something separate. That's essentially where, like Taylor, I don't know if you're talking about that, but that's something that I've been trying to figure out the right balance of abstraction there.
Couldn't they do it using a custom provider? Let's say
Yeah,
have local host running and then have that to kind of interface with the service mesh.
they could. Um, they would have to, essentially what people have to do now is use the built-in HTTP provider for ingress, soon built-in client provider. Um, and then you have to have Nats Jetstream set up somewhere, even if it's just local, because like Wasm Cloud won't start without it or socialize links. Um, So, but you're right. We could totally do it with a custom provider. It's just about if we could remove the requirement for like a NATS deployment with wasmCloud, assuming you solve all the other problems.
Well, personally, I consider the combination of NATs and the ability to write your own providers, providing a lot of flexibility. So, what I mentioned about HTTP2, for example, is that, again, for good reasons, all the new protocols that come about agentic work, all of them are centered around HTTP2. And we do know that WASI doesn't support it. So, right, we kind of have that dependency.
Mhm.
And then we have some security considerations on the wasmCloud that, for MCPs that are IO-based, limits what you can do. That's the area that I don't know how securely could be enabled without really compromising the security guarantees that the platform provides, right? But there is only so much that could be done at the moment with the specs that we got, right?
Yeah, right.
But I don't think flexibility is something that the platform lacks. That's my personal opinion.
Yeah. No, that's a thanks. I mean, that's what that's what we want to have is a really flexible, extensible platform. Um, Forgot how we got on this thread exactly.
It was about roadmap,
Yes.
and I put my wish list, but I do know that where it's coming from, and that's why I'm not putting any comments there. It's not something that we could do internally, right?
Yeah. Um, yeah, cool. Well, thanks, Masood. Yeah, that's all awesome stuff. Everybody, please feel free to leave your comments, questions, concerns, feedback, uh, love letters in the Q3 2025 roadmap. I think that's probably enough there. I did want to call out just for the last thing, I wanted to call out a new. Oh no, that does go to the deploy preview. A new page that's in our documentation. This is something that um uh sorry, Yordis, I just saw your comment. Okay, maybe we'll come back to that one. I wanted to call out a new page in our documentation. We've had a couple of different pages in the docs around our use of NATs, and specifically the question that we get more often is like, "Hey, I'm deploying Wasm Cloud somewhere. What NATs streams, key value buckets do I need to set up ahead of time? How do they need to be configured? What are the subjects that I need to allow or deny in and out of my NATS accounts? This is a fairly complicated area of like a production Wasm Cloud setup. So under the reference guide under NATS, I've tried to collect all the information that we have around the docs. I'm sure it's not everything, and not everything needs to just like shuffle into here, but I at least wanted to have an easy place for folks to take a look at, what subjects do we use in Wasm Cloud? Here is the subject structure for our wRPC protocol. So if you're interested in like allow listing RPC for components, you can do star.star.wrpc.caret to allow everything, and that's detailed here. Like here's how you could debug like all RPC traffic that's flowing in the Wasm Cloud system. This is basically what wash_spy does for you, but with a specific ID here by filling in this second wildcard. Um, so here's everything we use for RPC, and here's the pattern and subjects that we use for the control interface. Like, how could you subscribe to see what messages are going across the interface? And here's what the wADM API uses. All of this, and I won't go through everything, but what I did want to call out is like here's the 2 KB buckets that wasmCloud uses. So if you wanted to pre-provision them, set up replicas, back them by a file, and start backing them up, you don't have to let wasmCloud create it for you. You can create it. wasmCloud will connect to it. Same thing with wadm. And I also left some information about productionizing this. Like, you should definitely back up your wadm manifests bucket, because that's where all of the declarative manifests for your applications live. But wadm state is not as critical to back up. We reconstitute this every max 60 seconds if you just miss a heartbeat, but realistically, in less than 30 seconds, we reconstitute the entire state by combining all the heartbeats of hosts in the lattice. Here are the streams that we use. Here are, like, as a recommended operator structure for signing keys. I mean, there's a ton of information in here. Just tried to brain dump the way that we use NATs. So I'm sure this isn't a complete reference, but when we say a hub and spoke architecture, this is what we're talking about, like your setup with NAT servers and clusters. So if you were curious and wanted to read a little bit more about how we use NATs across the entirety of the wasmCloud ecosystem, it's all here. I think this is going to be really informative for what we are basically trying to think about when we think about, like, what can we make an abstraction and what can we lean further into NATs on. This is a great kind of hub to consider that. Also the APIs that we use for those. So I just wanted to point this out for folks trying to centralize some of the reference documentation here for the curious people. Of course, you probably don't really need to know all of this before you get started, but we've definitely noticed that depending on your learning style, some people really like to come into the docs, read how things are being used and how they work. And this should serve as a great it should serve as a great place to go to understand how we're using such a powerful technology. Yeah, Diátaxis. Yeah, Masood, I'd love that suggestion. We have, our documentation page of the week, but oh, sorry. Masood suggested having a what's new section, like on the main page or main page of the docs or something, just to call out some new pages. I think that'd be great. There's documentation's hard, man. Just always improving. You always have to write it, always have to keep it up to date. But that'd be really nice, especially as we add stuff like deployment guides. Like, here's how you deploy Wasm Cloud to OpenShift or whatever. Then maybe we don't have to do that one. But that kind of thing would be really helpful.
Sorry. I think a CI job could help with that. I have seen other projects automating that out of, the change log and those, maybe the document tags, or, collected, something even basic that says, these are the new docs or updated docs, and then people can jump to those pages. Because for somebody who has read through the documentation, coming back is kind of go and discover what has changed. And it's time consuming, because really you need to figure out really what's new.
Yeah. I feel like we've considered using the versions for this a little bit more liberally. Like, right now we have docs for pre 1.0 and then post 1.0. But if we used release notes for some automation, we could have a version of the docs um for like wasmCloud 1.8. And then on that page, you kind of get in the documentation, maybe we have an attribute, like a little sparkly emoji or whatever, for like the new documentation that came with that new version. Something like that. I'm just kind of thinking out loud. This, I hate to say it, this kind of feels like something that would be valuable to try and set up in like an LLM context for. Not saying to have an LLM write the docs, but more so if it has the context of the documentation repository and then it can take in the release notes as an input, then we could probably do interesting things to point out sections of the documentation that need to change potentially, or new documentation that needs to be generated. Like, you added this new feature for error handling, but I didn't see anything for it in the docs. That might be an interesting application to help lowly developers like myself who forget where everything is, what needs to change. Hmm. Sounds like a little docs refresh might be in the mix for Q3. I don't know.
Yeah,
Could be.
you could take advantage of the release for the website itself,
Yeah. Um,
like start publishing. I just noticed there's no release thingy in it.
yeah, we don't have like a releases like we don't publish the release notes to the documentation site. We
Yeah.
we actually kind of have this problem generally. Like, we have markdown documents in the GitHub that we don't publish as to the site because, like, you got to sync it to a different repo. So we just
Mm.
haven't set that up. But maybe we should. I mean, I hate to add more things to the mono repo, more thoughts there, but that would be one advantage of having documentation alongside the main project.
I think kind of describing what we want to achieve will help us understand what would be the best implementation approach for that. There are different ways to, slice and dice this. And by the way, I'm working on some custom context for wasmCloud. If it pans out, I'm going to publish it, and then we can all use it. But I'm still working on that area, so I don't know what is going to come out of it. Maybe nothing, but
Yeah.
hopefully not. I mean, when I'm saying that hopefully not, meaning that something comes out that will be useful for everybody, right? And then we can see how we can put that to use for, let's say, at least some of these repetitive tasks that, are not enjoyable to do by hand.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. Like, searching through the entire documentation to figure out if you need to change an OCI reference is lame. Um, okay. Yeah. To maybe round that out on my side, I don't have a specific prescription for what I want to do on the docs. I really like the Diátaxis, like, um yeah, the framework for organizing things. So, I really wouldn't. Oh, and here comes Jordas. I I really like how I feel like we've leaned into that. Maybe we could lean harder, and like literally call it like how-tos reference whatever on the sidebar. Um, but generally, I think we have quite a lot of documentation, and I'd like to work with Eric, our main technical writer, on the Cosmonic side, who writes a lot of docs for wasmCloud, to like help curate some of those flows. Like, if really verbose content, technical content goes into reference, and reference is a large section, that's great. And the guides are like very pointed. That's really the only opinion that I have. I don't have a strong, plan or desire for where the future of the documentation needs to go. But we'll get there. Um, Thankfully, I think Yordas knows exactly where it should go. So, Yordas?
Nah, I just say like I do prefer if you actually label the pages like uh it's an explanation or how to or whatever. Like it's a small thing because like sometimes I just had to click around to find which one I actually want because I cannot tell based on the hierarchy. That is my only like, okay, yeah, I wish I know. It's like the ones are under references. Okay, I know everything down there is a reference. But the operation guide is like, okay, it's a how to. When I go in, it sounds like it's an explanation or not, things like that. Like environment variables inside the operational guide feels more like an explanation, yada yada. So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. How to Kubernetes deploy. Boom. That would be that kind of stuff is not, yeah, like the idea. I like it. I like it. Um, well, hey, Yordis, if you have any like specific thoughts you've written up on it or whatever, please definitely share. But you know, I don't think we're
Um, I help the sequence guys to honestly introduce us well, and I love his documentation. I can pass you a link later on.
awesome.
I think, yeah,
Great.
they have done a really good job with it.
Cool. Yeah, thank you. Yeah. Well, hey, interested in that's reference documentation? We got some of that now. We got more of that now. Other than that, I think that's pretty much all that we have for the call today. We've got maybe 5 minutes left. Does anybody have anything that we wanted to talk about from like the wasmCloud side, broader WebAssembly ecosystem? Like maybe one last topic? Speak
Mm,
now or forever hold your peace. Well, yep. What?
My LLM hallucinated the other day. You cost me $3.
I can't. Yeah, my bad on being so confident that repo never existed. It's just, Jordis, there's not that many repos in the
Yeah,
Wasm Cloud org that
social
or-
gaslighting. Like I'm
look,
wrong. Okay, fine.
I'm wrong. Okay, well, I guess me getting gaslit is the last topic of today's meeting. Everything's going great. Sorry, just kidding, Jordis. I think we can probably call it though before we just goof off for 3 whole minutes. But anyways, thanks everybody. Thank you for coming to Wasm Cloud Wednesday and participating again. Mike, awesome demo. Thanks for coming back so quickly. As soon as you make progress or have questions, we will always have you back for another demo. But other than that, I think we can go ahead and call it. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you next week for Wasm Cloud Wednesday.